it's an exercise in item number 14 on the handout, professionalism. I think one of the ways that our organization can serve its members is to preach and practice professionalism. We are professionals. We're justices of the peace. We're not JPs, we're justices of the peace. And we, in our everyday conduct, in meeting clients, bride and grooms, meeting other professionals, we should practice professionalism. We should practice as justices of the peace. And I think as an organization, we should take our sergeant at arms at our meetings, and we should start a little program at our meetings, and every time we amongst us refer to each other as JPs, we should have a little kitty going. That person that uses the phrase JP put 50 cents or $1 into a little cup, and before you know it, we will have a scholarship fund that's self-funding. And we should do this on a regular basis, and we should start this as a movement, and suddenly we'll find ourselves with the groundswell of enthusiasm of professionalism. So really, we should start this groundswell of professionalism amongst ourselves. And you'll be amazed. You'll suddenly, the men, excuse the expression, women, you'll be puffing your chest out all the time, because that's what we really are. You'll find attorneys are proud of their profession. Why else would they become attorneys? They become attorneys because they're professionals. And town and city clerks are professionals. Any city or town clerks amongst us? Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
How about attorneys? Any attorneys amongst us? No attorneys amongst us, but they're proud of their profession, or why else would they be attorneys? So remember, we're professionals. Okay? So that's the first item on our agenda today. Introduction. Now, brief comments by participants on what they expect to realize at this JP 101. Does anybody have any comments of what they expect to realize at this JP 101?
You owe the kitty $1 now because you said JP twice.
Okay. Sergeant of Arms is here. He's not here, so he can't question me. But I'd gladly pay it. Does anybody have any comments at this point so far? What do you expect to? Yes?
I just get confused with the, and I keep bringing it up, but it's because the confusion for me, the notary part of the JP thing, which isn't well known, but it is there. So that, I would want to know a little bit about that, a little more about that.
Well, when we all were sworn in, we took 2 oaths. First as a notary public and second as a justice of the peace. So we have that power, whereas a notary public only can notarize documents, because there are certain documents that a notary public can't notarize, but a justice of the peace can. I know as a justice of the peace, I've notarized some documents that only a justice of the peace can do. I refer to one of them as a body warrant that a Secretary of State or an Attorney General in an adjacent state issues that a justice of the peace can exercise, where they ask for a warm body, as I refer to it, in a capital offense. Has anybody had to notarize those as a justice of the peace?
Body warrant?
Yes.
Are you
If somebody,
referring to a capious warrant, Bill?
similar to that, someone that commits a capital crime of murder, where the Attorney General wants that person to appear in their state, to be a prime witness in a murder. So they issue this warrant for that person's body, either dead or alive, to go to that state. If the person's alive, they have to give witness testimony in a capital offense. I know both instances were New Hampshire crimes. So a justice of the peace has to issue that document. So I've signed those documents on 2 occasions. It's a rare document, but a justice of the peace is the one that has to execute the documents. And also, a justice of the peace, as far as giving affidavits, you can do that, whereas a notary public can't. So there's certain documents that a justice of the peace can exercise and help complete, whereas a notary public can't. And I think as far as deeds and real estate documents, justice of the peace can exercise, whereas a notary public can't. So that's why we, as justices of the peace, we have the power to be notary publics, whereas a notary public can't do the things that we can do.
Okay, so that makes you a justice. So what I'm looking for is I want to make a seal or a stamp or something like that. So what would that look like? You can't put notary on it.
The seal would say Justice of the Peace, wouldn't it?
Michael, you want to answer that question? You were saying something.
I was saying that it's the same seal with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but it'd say Justice of the Peace and the date of the expiration of your commission, and you would use that as if you were a notary, but you would be signing it as a Justice of
Okay, that
the
was
Peace.
part of the clarity, because, you know, I mean, that isn't, I don't think a lot of people do that, but that's one of the aspects of our function, so I want to make sure that that's something that I've got covered correctly.
As a notary public in Massachusetts, you can have the seal of Massachusetts on your notary,
Right.
but as a justice of the peace, you can't,
No,
all right?
right.
But as a justice of the peace with notarial power, you cannot have the seal of the Commonwealth on your stamp.
No.
No,
Is there a seal for JP?
no,
It's more than Massachusetts.
you have to make up your own. Yes,
So in my case, for instance, I'm also notary public,
yes,
and then I became justice of the peace.
Yes.
I have to use 2 seals in the event that it requires, I mean, I will have not to use, but I would have to have 2 separate seals.
you can use your justice of the peace seal.
Or for those documents that are not signed by justice of the peace, but need notarization, then I would use.
Now, what you can do is you can use your justice of the peace seal, put JP/NP, am I right?
I could do that.
Yeah,
But the thing is that the commission expires at different dates, so that's where it gets tricky. I would have to have 2 separate ones,
no, you don't have to have 2 separate ones.
but the commission expires different dates.
Commission is different.
Yes,
Yeah.
to have a seal?
do you have to have a seal?
And a notary, yes.
To notary.
As a notary, yes.
Well, some documents require a seal, some documents don't.
If they go out of
It's
state.
best to question, when you're requested to sign a document as a notary public or a justice of the peace, it's best to question, do you require a seal? If they say yes, then use it. If they say no, then don't. Okay?
So it would basically say Justice of the Peace, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, expiration date, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And maybe your name on it.
Sure.
Okay, great. I just-
Any other questions? Yes, Mike, sir.
Bill, this is just in reference to the original question you asked. I really appreciate the breadth of the 14 items you have in there, because I think when I became a Justice of the Peace 12 years ago, I didn't even realize that this was all the things involved. I've learned it over 12 years, but I just think this is a great cross-section of the variety.
There's at least 28 more things.
I know there are, yeah.
Okay, that's just the first things that came to my mind.
Right.
Now-
Okay.
There's more. If anybody has any other questions that pertain to number 2, speak up. If If anybody doesn't have any questions on number 2, we'll go to number 3. Now, number 3, evolution of the office of Justice of the Peace. What office within the executive branch does the Justice of the Peace hold? Anybody want to venture that one?
Which one?
Number 3.
Okay, what office do we hold within the executive branch? Anybody want to guess? Okay, within the executive branch,
Appointed by the, were appointed by the governor's council.
okay, within the executive branch, who's the head of the executive branch?
Governor.
The governor, all right. So within the executive branch, where do we sit? Judicial,
Judicial, yeah.
all right? So we have a tree called the executive tree. What branch do we sit? All right, we sit on the judicial branch. We're the lonely element, we're the small acorn. Okay, we're the lowest part of the judicial branch. At one time, we were a very important part of the judicial branch. Now we're the very minor part. The first marriage in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, way back when the Pilgrims/Puritans came from England by way of Holland, the first marriage was done by a Justice of the Peace. They were very anti-religious, strange to say, when they came over from the other country. It was done by a Justice of the Peace. But then they got religion. They still kept the office of Justice of the Peace through the years. So we have a very old office. It goes back to early English times. In early English times, the office of Justice of the Peace was very important. And as it evolved in the Commonwealth, it was a very important office. But then it became a very minor office. And as the governor's counselor had stated, our office did hold court through the years. And within the New England colonies, they held court. They did some very important things. In New York, today, they hold minor court. Some are elected. Connecticut, they're elected. Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, they're important as well. And if you tell people in other states you're a Justice of the Peace, some really think you're a very important person. Within our organization, we feel we're very important people. So you really consider yourself important professionals. Anybody have any questions about number 3?
I just have an observation. You said they were very anti-clerical when they started in the Puritan time. I think it's kind of come full circle again, in the sense of, like, I get many weddings now of people that are refused to be married in, I happen to be Catholic, they can't get married in the Catholic Church if it's outside the structure of the
Right.
church. I mean, in the physical building. So I get a lot of people referred to me by priests and by the people themselves who want to get married outside somewhere.
Right?
And they come to me because of that very fact.
But you know, I've heard a lot of criticism about the Catholic Church for their staunch attitudes about marriage, and they have to go 6 months in advance to make arrangements. But it isn't just the Catholic Church that has that staunch. Other faiths have that as well. But when people think of those restrictions, they only think of the Catholic Church's restrictions. But if you go to the Greek Orthodox Church and you speak to the priests there, they have some pretty strong feelings about different things. And if you go to the high Episcopal churches,
Any
they have
Episcopal
strong feelings too.
church. Any Episcopal church,
Pardon?
any Episcopal church.
Right,
There are canons that govern marriage.
right.
There are laws that govern marriage.
So it isn't just the Catholics, it's other religions too. And I'm not knocking other religions, I'm not knocking Catholics, of which I'm one. So I think organized religions in many instances take some unfair knocks. But you have to respect their beliefs. or if you don't like their beliefs, then don't accept them and go elsewhere. And that's what they're saying.
Just a light on why the Puritans, you had Justice of the Peace, is don't forget the Puritans were anti-Church of England. They didn't believe marriage is a sacrament. And so it was a secular thing for them. It was a civil thing for them. And it wasn't until probably in the 1830s you start seeing ministers in the Congregational Church, which was the Puritans, start really performing marriages for people.
Okay, let me digress a minute from what we've gone so far. This package that you were given has different elements. We heard from the governor's counselor talk about fees that are charged, so it's appropriate we're a number 4. Rosario Salerno, who has one of the elements within this, was the city clerk of Boston. Now, she was a former Franciscan nun. And if anybody had any dealings with nuns, she was the ruler across the knuckles type of a nun. Tough broad. Oh. Pardon? Yep. She was lovely, but she was a ruler across the knuckles. She left the nunhood in the 80s, I think. And when I first went to a Justice of the Peace meeting back in the late 80s, she sat there with another nun, and they were chaplains at Boston College. She subsequently became a Boston City Councilor, and she was a good friend of Dapper O'Neill's. They butted heads a few times. She eventually became the city clerk of Boston, and she on her own passed a rule that only she could do a civil wedding within the confines of Boston City Hall. So she received her salary as the city clerk of Boston, but she also received a fee for every wedding that was done in Boston City Hall. So as of probably 10 years ago, she was collecting a salary of $65,000 plus a year for the weddings that she did in the confines of Boston City Hall, plus the salary of the Boston City clerk. So she was getting a lot of money. But within that packet you received, she has a story about Justice of the Peace. And it's a very good story. She put that together quite a few years ago for our association because she was president at one time. So it's interesting reading. The back end of that handout, there is a story by Mark McLaughlin that talks about wedding traditions from different cultures. It's an interesting story. He talks about mostly Hispanic and South American cultures. It's a very good story to read. There's a nice handout from Carol Merlady. She's not here, is she? No. So it's very interesting readings. So just take it home with you. And it's odd to refer to it right now because we're in the throes of summer, but on a cool winter night, it makes for good reading. It's nice, interesting readings in there. Duties of a Justice of the Peace. So take it home with you and read it when you have nothing else to do. When you have a cancellation from a wedding, you have nothing else to do. Take it out and read it because it's very interesting readings. You have a listing of all the governor's counselors in the front part. So it's very interesting readings. Moving on, fee structure. We all know it's $100 within your hometown, $150 outside of your hometown. But one of the things that's never stressed at any of our meetings, and it's a secret that we never talk about, but if you go to do a wedding, and if you get stiffed, which means the couple never pay you, the wedding is still valid. All right? Under law, you have to do the wedding. The license has to be filed. It's a valid wedding. And you can't do a single thing about the wedding.
You can't withhold. You can't withhold you
Excuse me?
can't withhold the license.
You can't withhold the
No,
license.
You have to,
You have to file the license. You can swear under your breath at the couple. You can't do a single thing about it. The Secretary of State, if you file a complaint, will tell you, that's tough. It's your fault that you didn't get the money. It's a valid marriage. Yes, Arthur?
Bill, 2 points on that, and they have happened to me in the past, where you do have a recourse to filing small claims
Yes,
in the court.
right.
Second of all, which I don't understand why everyone does not do that, is to get paid before the wedding.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Doctor?
Who is responsible for filing the application for a marriage license? Is it the Justice of the Peace, or is it the two people who are about to be married?
It's the responsibility of the prospective bride and groom. It's their responsibility to file the application
And receive then the certificate?
and receive the certificate.
Thank you.
Now, following up with Arthur said, before they left, Lucian Poyant told me that he was faced with a cancellation of a wedding at the last minute. He was told just before the wedding, a day or so before the wedding, that the couple had changed their mind, they weren't getting married. But in fact, this was a summer wedding. They had canceled in January, but never told him. They told the venue, they told the caterer, they told the photographer, they told everybody else, but they didn't tell him. They were in California, so he took them to small claims. And as soon as they were served with all the notices, they sent him his fee. So, following what you said, if the couple don't pay you, you can take them to small claims. Okay? So that's an option. But what I said before, if you perform the ceremony and for some reason you don't get paid, you're really out in left field. The wedding is valid. You don't have too many options to get paid, but one of them is small claims. Okay?
So
Anybody have any questions on that?
I do, because that's a very interesting case. So the wedding didn't take place,
Wedding didn't take place.
didn't have the paperwork.
Excuse me. Okay.
Right.
So you're supposed to marry the couple, but never took place,
Right,
right?
right. So you're still getting paid for it, but what about the concept of filing? You don't, it never occurred, so you don't have to worry.
There's no final.
Right.
Okay. Okay, now, the wedding never took place, there's no filing.
Right.
But if you're doing a marriage renewal,
Okay.
or if you're doing a mock wedding, there's no filing.
Okay.
You're still subject to get paid for something.
Right.
Okay. So if you're doing a marriage renewal, or if you're doing a mock wedding, and they didn't pay you, you can take them to small claims court if you want.
Okay.
Any other questions?
But what would be a fee on that? What kind of fee? Same?
Because it's not covered under the fee structure, the fee is whatever you agreed to charge them before the fact,
Okay.
okay? Now, what I charge and what my wife charges is the cost of the wedding. If it's in town, my city, $100. Outside of my city, it's $150. But I'll put something to that. If the wedding is outside of the Commonwealth, if we have the proper documentation to do the wedding outside of the Commonwealth in the state of New Hampshire, in New Hampshire, the fee that's set for a justice of the peace in New Hampshire, for resident justice of the peace in New Hampshire, is a donation. But where we're coming into New Hampshire, there's no limit as to what you can charge. So we charge
Oh, I see.
what Massachusetts allows. So we charge them $150 for the wedding. Yes?
So what you were referring to earlier was, it was last minute cancellation that the Justice of the Peace was notified. So do you have any kind of time frame that you would if somebody canceled like 3 weeks before, if you had a deposit, would you return the deposit, or?
No,
No?
Well, we use, 36 hours,
36 hours?
yeah, day and a half, 2 days.
Okay,
They have to notify us within that period of time.
otherwise you would charge a full fee.
Yeah, but normally we don't get deposits too far in advance. We don't normally. Oop. Any questions? Yes?
Is it legal to have some kind of contract with the bride and groom that lays out the fees and the date of the wedding that you have them sign? Do you need something like that?
I asked you earlier if there's any lawyers. There's no lawyers here.
I'm not a lawyer.
Okay. Yes, you, under Massachusetts law, you should have a contract. What we do is we send them a confirmation letter, which in effect is a contract. Who here uses a contract? We got 2 people, 3 people,
Only
4
on
people?
request.
Pardon?
Only on request.
Only on request. But if a lawyer was in the room, they would advise you that you use a contract at all times. My suggestion is, if you have a friendly lawyer, a friend who's a lawyer, they will give you a sample contract that you should incorporate into a confirmation letter as to protect yourself. But by all means, you should have some type of a quasi-legal document that you use all the time. Because you should have an out. Because you're reserving your precious time, okay? Especially during the busy times of the year. Because you're reserving a block of time for them that has a value to it. And you should always remember that. Yes?
Before we use this confirmation paper, we had gone to a wedding that was scheduled, only to find out that the bride contacted one justice of the peace and groom contacted a different one, and both showed up. But because the other one was there 5 minutes before we arrived, they used that one. So it is good to have this confirmation paper so that they can then see in writing, you contracted to do the wedding with us.
So what happened in that case?
We just left.
good doing.
We didn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Sometimes you really have to use a lot of discretion. Yes, Bill? All right, we got a hand up back there.
Oh, I was just saying that as far as the agreement, I do use one, and provided it's not a beach wedding, like I do a lot of beach weddings, the couples are used to this with their DJ, with their venue, with their florist. They probably all have agreements, some sort of contract, and we're professionals, like you said, so why don't we have one as well? It protects us.
Sure. Yep, doesn't hurt. If they're used to a contract, if we suggest, well, here's my contract, here's my form of contract, they accept it. Good. Okay, tools of our trade. The most normal tools of our trade is a business card. We all should have business cards. Does anybody here not have a business card? Why not?
Because we're new. I have a question about this. Because in joining the MJPA, I noticed there's reference to us being able to use the seal on our business card. How do we obtain the seal? Is there a file that I can get?
There's a file you can get on the website.
Okay, I just
Downloadable.
perhaps haven't explored enough, but that's
It's,
what I wanted
it's,
to know.
it's under the member website,
Okay,
information, logos.
okay.
Under what?
Information, logos,
Before
member
the-
information under logos.
But under no circumstances, you shouldn't use the seal of the Commonwealth.
No, you
Avoid that. They're the other people.
All right, who else had the hand up that said they don't have a business card? Okay, you can download most business cards on your computer. Okay? You can go to your local printers, very reasonable amount, download, right? As soon as you get back to Winthrop, get a deal on a couple of hundred business cards until you can set up a system to have 500 to 1,000 done somewhere at a cheap rate. But get some business cards going. Yes, Murray?
Vistaprint.com, you can get fabulous deals on business cards.
Sure.
And they'll set up a website for you for free afterwards.
Yep. But just get a
Matching
minimal
business cards.
number of cards right away, just to have them. Keep them in your purse. And you'd be surprised how fast they go. Anybody else? Now, the reason why you have a supply right away, because you'll be amazed the places you go. If you go to lunch, most places at the receptionist desks will have places for business cards. Leave a few. Beauty parlors have bulletin boards. Leave a few. You know, it's amazing where you come across. Because when you start visualizing business cards, you'll see depositories for business cards at every place you go. Don't be bashful, leave them there. You know, friends. Oh, I know you were JP, do you have a business card? You know, believe me, they're well worth it. Okay? Now, that's one tool of the trade. The second tool of the trade is the telephone, and especially telephone books, things like that. And don't be bashful to speak to friends and acquaintances to promote you as a justice of the peace. Anybody have any suggestions of other places where you can mention? Yes?
Social media. Facebook.
Right?
Facebook.
I have one of the pages, so fans can like it. And my friends have all shared it, and that's helped get the word out.
Good. Yes, Murray?
Every time I do a wedding, I take a picture of the bride and groom with their permission. And I also let them know that if they want to see it, they can go to facebook.com/Murray McConnell, and the wedding pictures are all right there. And it's so easy for them.
Good. All right.
Bill?
Yes?
Website. Everybody should have their own website with a landing page so that when people are looking for a justice of the peace, they can immediately contact you. Okay? Have it on there. Make sure you have a landing page. Make it simple, not too content dense. Okay? Nice visuals, and you can have it done, and it can look just like your business cards. So it can, all the visuals are coordinated.
And if I may also, you link with the MJPA
Yes.
because when you sign up, the MJPA lists your website.
Right.
So you both, as a courtesy type thing, link back and forth. So if someone clicks on the MJPA, looking for a justice in Rentham or Lowell or, you know, Spencer, your name's going to come on up.
Good. We got a hand back there.
There must be other websites, there that you're aware of to
Right.
register on?
It's amazing. My wife and I were up in New Hampshire this past week, and we were trying to get into our email. So we put in our email address, L67var, and lo and behold, a whole list of things came up, and one of them was our site for Justice of the Peace. And all we put in was just our email address, and we were scratching our heads, how the hell did this come up? You know?
Search term.
But it came up.
It's a search term.
Yeah.
Yeah, they search
And we
on
were
that.
surprised. I couldn't believe it. But it came up. It was amazing. Anybody else have a question?
One more thing is an advertising gimmick. The pens, name, address, phone number, email, website.
We're constantly getting them in the mail.
Exactly, and they're very, very cheap.
Yeah.
Give one out to each one of your clients, leave them at the cleaners, leave them wherever you go. It's free advertising, well, not quite free, but boy, it
cheap
definitely
advertising.
pays off.
Cheap.
That's
Well, when it
one of
comes
the
to those
best
pins, I'm
advertising
kinda
tools
cheap.
we've used.
I get them in the mail and they call me up a week later and they say, how many would you like to buy? I say, no, thank you.
Well, 300 for, you know, say you get 300 or 400 pens for $100. You know, 300 or 400, that's like handing out 3 or 4 business cards, but people are gonna keep them. Get a pen that's a little different, unique. When they leave them someplace, it's still advertising for the person that picks it up.
Yeah. Boy, you're loose with your money.
No,
He makes enough of it.
gained the
There's a lot
money
of
back,
winning.
believe me.
Okay, moving on. All right, we have a town clerk who's brave enough to say she's a clerk. Yeah.
There's another one over there, Bill.
What,
We have another time.
we have another one over there too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Who are our friends, city and town clerks? You certainly are. They can do more damage if you tick them off. But of course, we don't tick them off because they are very good, nice. They are very good to us, and they're very nice because we have to return the license to them. And if we do everything they ask us to do, they're the best advocates in the world. Because really, it's very simple instructions. Use black ink. Use numbers when you're supposed to. Excuse me?
Words when you're supposed to.
Right. Look at the license to make sure the dates haven't expired. Things like that. Very simple instructions. Because many times we do a marriage on the weekend when their office is closed and there's an emergency with their license. And if we don't abuse our office, they're very helpful to us. But if we come across very strong and very bossy, they're not going to help us. But many times, it's a very simple mistake on a license that they can help us with. But if we come across all-knowing, they're not about to be helpful to us. So it's very important to respect their office, and they'll respect our office. If we respect their professionalism, they'll respect our professionalism. And if the town is near where you are, and if you bring the license in and explain the circumstances, they'll help you out.
So it seems on the license, if you made a mistake, there's a charge of $100 even for a single mistake.
I'll give you an answer to your question.
$100?
Who?
If you made a mistake on the
Who
marriage.
charges $100? I don't wanna get their license.
Yeah.
And stay out of Tingsboro. Stay out of Tingsboro.
They charge $100 for
No, they charge you though in
20.
Tingsboro.
Well, most charge about $10 if you make a mistake. I've never heard of $100.
$100.
Tingsboro charges you $20.
As a town clerk,
Excuse me?
as a town clerk, when there's mistakes on the license, I don't charge, I don't think you charge either. But it is a lot of work. It's very
Yeah.
tedious, it takes a long time to get it to the state to get it right, and then that couple can't get their certificate. So it's really important.
Lowell doesn't charge us
Lowell
either.
doesn't charge. But if you're making out the license, and if you make a mistake, Tingsboro charges you $20
Wow.
A retyping fee, right?
to
I think in Boston they charge.
to go over to the printer, punch the key, to spit out a new license that's in the printer.
You can't save them. So once you type in a marriage certificate, you can't save it on your form. So you have to retype the whole thing. So it isn't just, it would be
Yeah.
nice, you can't save it.
Yeah, you cannot erase on it.
No,
No, erasing in whiteout, they get it.
You check.
Yeah, you check. No.
Who charged you $100?
No, I never make a mistake.
Oh.
I bet you don't have any pencils with erasers on it either.
I made friends with my town clerk by the fact that a couple of days before the wedding, there were a couple of people from West Africa, and a mistake had been made between who was the male and who was the female, because the names were not, it's not clear, in one sense. And they had the person A, the male was actually the female. So I brought it to them early, and they thanked me profusely that they could correct it before the wedding. Because after the wedding, it's really a bear.
Yeah.
to correct, you know, so it does help. So if you see the license beforehand, early enough to notice, then you really, and so I've gotten into the habit of trying to really look carefully, even more so than I used to. I never really
Yeah.
thought something like that would happen, but,
So we always caution our bride and grooms to really inspect that license before they leave city or town hall, to make sure there's no mistakes. Because it's very important, you know? That's why I say, I can't say it strong enough, the city and town clerks, the first line, they're your best friends. And when we get the license, if it's before the marriage, if we can spot the mistake, we go right to them. Because we're saving them a lot of aggravation, especially if they made the mistake. And again, we respect their professionalism, they respect ours, and it's a good relationship, you know? And also, one thing that's very important, if they're not available to do a wedding, and if they know you, and if they have a good working relationship with you, they'll refer the weddings to you over somebody else that they don't have a good relationship with you. You know, in Lowell, we had a bad incident a few years ago with the city clerk and the assistant city clerk. The city clerk had his hands in the cookie jar. And the assistant city clerk, she didn't, but she was not treated well. So for a 3-month period of time, we were called to do weddings. And we wouldn't have been called if we didn't have that type of a relationship, you know? So it's important, keep the lines of communication open, have a good relationship, and it'll be well rewarded. Okay? Now, as far as advocates, there are many advocates within your community that you deal with that you really don't know about. And those are the ones that you deal with on a regular basis. The folks that are in the hospitality community, people that work within the hotel industry, people that work as photographers, people that work as disc jockeys, musicians, people like that. They see you working on a regular basis when you do weddings in the facilities that they work in. And they're watching you on a regular basis. And if they see the type of services that you perform, and they recommend you, because you can recommend them. And if they see the job you do, they'll be glad to recommend you. Now, someone had their hand up over here and I missed it. Nobody? Okay. Now, Donna, anytime you want to jump in with your PowerPoint presentation.
No, it's mostly all of the content inside your packet, so if they
Okay,
can
we'll
read
come
it
to
out.
that too.
Yeah.
We'll come to that. Now, advertising, there was a question raised earlier about that. Anybody want to make a comment about advertising? Yes, Arthur.
A lot of times, if you're gonna advertise, don't do it like in a weekly newspaper, if you have a town paper or something, because that gets thrown out. If you're gonna spend the money to advertise, do it in a telephone book that people, as rare as telephone books are getting, but a lot of the small communities have local telephone books. Advertise in that. They're gonna use that telephone book for a year, year and a half, or 2 years, instead of having a daily newspaper and throwing it out the next day. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck.
Aren't there places you cannot advertise?
All right, well, what are some of the places you can't advertise?
On the internet.
It's true.
Well, you keep that thought for a minute, though. Any other place? Seeing no one has any other comments? Yes?
Yeah, a
Where?
billboard would not be allowed.
Where?
A billboard would not be allowed.
Okay. Yes?
Well, I couldn't advertise myself as a clerk that I was a JP. You know, we give out a list of names,
Yeah.
and they get to choose from that list if they so desire.
So is this Are you a town or a city clerk?
Town.
Town clerk. So at your counter, you couldn't advertise?
Right, I mean, I have a picture of myself up there, you know, for another couple.
Yeah.
You know, we could say, well, we do the services as well as these other people in the town, so it's not like a specific.
But how do you think that the city clerk in Brockton gets away with it, or the city clerk in Springfield gets away with it?
Yeah.
Well, you know what, their clerks are basically separate from the rest of the town government, because it depends on whether they're elected or appointed. If some are appointed by the town council, then they have their own entity almost, so they basically run their own offices.
Yeah.
You know?
We had a JP from the Cape, McGrath. Does anybody remember a guy named Morris McGrath? I think it was his name. Freddie McGrath. He claimed that the city clerk in Brockton did more weddings every year than everybody else in Brockton, all the churches, synagogues, Orthodox churches combined. I mean, that's a lot of weddings in Brockton. So this guy must have been doing something, you know?
Well, either he was doing a really good job, and everybody liked
Yeah.
him and referred him.
He was a male Rosario Salerno.
The guy in Worcester's like that too.
Interest if you did it during the working day.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
You would think it would be.
Well, you don't, but you know.
That
you do
that
it
was
on your
perfectly
lunch break
authorized by
or
the city of
no.
Boston, and the city of Worcester is the same, the clerk of the city of
Yes,
Worcester
sir.
did over
On
1,000
advertising, if
weddings.
you read the statute,
In
it
the
only
clerk's
tells you you can
office
use magazine,
on a
periodical
working day.
publications, there's nothing that says you
That's
can use the internet
Right.
Yeah.
Perfectly legal.
or websites.
Well, you know, earlier during the meeting, when we were talking about legislation, maybe one of the things that the association could push was the legislation on advertising, you know?
We have been pushing that for years, Bill.
It hasn't gone anywhere?
No.
It's one of those 2 bills or 3 bills that we have before the legislation. It keeps on recycling every year.
Yeah?
It's a common sense type thing, but they take no action on it. They just
Wasn't
keep on
Debbie
pushing
Smith pushing that too?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's when it
Yeah.
started. Years ago, I was on a legislative committee with Debbie Smith. I mean, this goes back, I wanna say 7, 8, 9 years?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sounds like
It doesn't specifically say you can't advertise on the internet,
Yes,
but
it
it doesn't say that you can.
But it specifically says
Yeah.
where you
It's pretty
can.
specific as far as the
Whoever
GPI.
advertises to perform or procure the performance of marriage by any other means shall be punished by a
Right.
fine. That's what it says.
Okay, we got a town clerk over here. Town or city clerk?
Town.
Town. All right, you want to add anything to this as a clerk?
I put my business card on the counter, it has that I'm a justice of the peace. It's been approved, so it's fine.
Yeah, okay.
I
All right,
think some,
yes.
could you clarify, you're saying it's illegal, it's not allowed to advertise on the internet,
Here, here.
but you can have a website or a
You
Facebook
can
page?
have the website and everything, but the same thing like with attorneys, that's where I was
This
at,
is
our
very-
point of view. It's very confusing, it's a common sense thing, even the attorneys, you know, they so they can advertise now, but justices of the peace can't.
Well, what do you think a
It-
website
it's-
and a
I understand the
Facebook
website.
page is?
I
A
understand.
website happens to be a means of a form
Information.
of communication, accessible form of
Right.
communication.
But
Now,
it doesn't say-
The advertisement is when you have those little pop-up ads and things like that, so that's an internet advertisement.
As a paid,
So the language changes.
This is
It's a little dicey.
It is.
This is very specific. Law is
Yeah.
very specific.
Okay. Moving.
So we don't have an answer to that?
Nope.
We're not sure?
no.
No. All right, give Caesar his due, federal and state taxes.
Ah,
Believe me, that can't be stressed too much. At the last quarterly meeting, there was a tax accountant to get up and talked about reporting taxes. Is there anyone in the room, and I know no one's gonna stand up to this one,
That does not.
that in our lifetime as justices of the peace, you can have a violation reported to the Secretary of State for misconduct as a justice of the peace. and it won't have as much pressure brought upon you than if you fail to pay the proper federal and state tax. Because those SOBs sitting in an IRS office, whether it be a state office or a federal office, they will hound you and hound you and hound you and hound you for life if you misreported your taxes that you made on money that you didn't report. Believe me, pay taxes. Even if you pay too much, but pay your taxes on money that you made through weddings. It's not worth the few dollars that you put in your pocket. Believe me, pay the proper taxes.
I work full-time, Bill, and I just had my taxes, well, I just had my taxes done, and because I already have a regular income, my JP income, my justice income is over and on top of it. And my CPA said, you're taking a loss. You are taking a loss, no more. You made an income. I basically had to say that I had a small amount of income. My expenses were higher than my income. Didn't matter. She said, you're not showing it anymore. You're showing it, but you're either flat or you made $2 profit on your JP income, but you are not showing a loss, whether you spent that money or not. Nope.
You're only allowed to show 3 out of 5 years losses.
3 out of 5 years.
For other income.
Right. So
if you've had losses for at least 3, then you gotta start showing your profit, like you said, even if it's $1 or 2.
right. All the bells and whistles will go off in the IRS, and I'll get a full audit across my income, my husband's income, the JP. No, it's just not worth it.
Do not play.
Nope.
Nope. Give Caesar his money,
Yes.
one form or another.
Yeah, it's smart. I
Because
bet.
they're gonna get it.
They will.
Yeah, and they will hound you every year after that.
That's right.
It's not worth it. Yes.
So if somebody was writing you a check to pay for your services, do you have them write out Justice and Peace after your name?
No.
No.
No, just, okay.
No.
It goes under your social security.
Yeah. But you should have an accountant or a professional do your taxes each year.
Do you have a separate account for?
Yes.
The account for?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. It's not worth it. It's not worth the aggravation. Become aware of wedding traditions of other cultures or nationalities. As I mentioned earlier in the back of the handout, there's a story by Mark McLaughlin. He was a justice of the peace, came from the Boston area. He was Hispanic with a name like McLaughlin. A nice gentleman. He only talked about Hispanic type of traditions, but there are many more. It's amazing. In all the years I've been a justice of the peace, it always amazes me the type of traditions, different cultures, from the Dutch with the wooden shoes to Brazilians to the Filipinos. It's amazing, the different things. And it's always best if you have the opportunity to meet with couples before the wedding and organizing the wedding, and if they come from different cultures and nationalities, find out if there's something unique to their families that they would like to incorporate into the wedding. And if there are, they'll tell you. And it's nice to include it, especially if one of the two are non-Americans and they're coming, their families are coming to the wedding, and they would like to bring into the wedding ceremony something that they're proud of. And it's nice to show that, to showcase it. Because there will be guests at the wedding that's not aware of these traditions. And they will, the Americans will remember these unique things at the wedding ceremony that they've never seen before. So it's nice to show these things. So it's nice, and if you can make yourself aware of what the traditions are, so you can be knowledgeable, you can talk about them, especially at the pre-wedding conferences. Anybody have any comments about that part of it? Not a, yes,
Yeah, I'm trying to keep my mouth shut, but these things keep on going through
No,
my
it's
mind.
okay.
One of the best resources that Eileen and I have found, you know those idiot books that come out? They have idiot books for weddings.
Yeah,
And that gives you so much information, and a lot of it is on traditions of different places and different
Right.
things. And the background and the guy, it's really, it's fun to sit down and read. But I mean, it's what a wealth of information, and what a resource it is to have that.
Weddings for Dummies.
Yeah, Idiot
Right.
Guide to Wedding for Dummies, yeah.
Yeah,
YouTube.
right.
All you have to do is Google any kind of wedding tradition you want. And not only do, you can get full videos on every kind of wedding tradition there is.
Right.
You can learn more in 5 minutes. YouTube it. You can see it. You can Google it and get the ceremonies. Everything. There's
Right.
no surprises anywhere.
Now, when I started to talk about this aspect of it, I mentioned wooden shoes in Holland. Now, I did a wedding quite a few years ago, North Andover, and it was an American man that was marrying a woman from Holland. And he didn't tell her, but just before the wedding, he put on wooden shoes. Because it was a custom in Holland that the groom wear wooden shoes. But he didn't tell her he was going to do that. So before she walked down the aisle, he slipped off his shoes and he put wooden shoes on. So as she was coming down the aisle, he stepped out so she could see him, and he had these wooden clogs on. And her eyes got big. Her father hadn't seen it, and he, big broad smile. And the groom really got accepted into the family then, because the groom took those few minutes to show the father and her family that he was sensitive to a custom that was unique to the Netherlands.
That's
You
pretty
know,
cool.
and it was very important to them. So it's nice, as a justice of the peace, if we're familiar with different things that pertain to the wedding customs of the couple that were married. It doesn't take much effort on our part to learn something unique to them, you know? But also, it's a two-sided sword. If we know things that are offensive to them, that we don't do that. Because it's insulting sometimes, the wrong colors, you know? If we wear a color tie or a color on our robe that's offensive to them, you know, unknowingly we're creating a problem that would turn their wedding into a disaster. So we have to be sensitive to that too. Okay? Now, networking with MJPA members and others. After the meeting was over, someone at our table mentioned about mentoring. No, it was Lucian Poyant mentioned about mentoring. All right? So the new members shouldn't hesitate to look into the webpage, find out where there's a member Justice of the Peace in the area where you live, and to contact us. Even if you want to go with us to a wedding that we're doing, see how we do things. You know, we're glad to do that. Yeah. And to, you know, just to, yeah. And solemnizing ceremonies in other states. Now, the only other states that we have done weddings have been in New Hampshire. But Mr. Justice Breer over here talked about doing weddings up in Vermont. Who has done weddings up in Maine? Not as a Massachusetts Justice of the Peace.
I have, but it was I did a wedding in Maine.
How'd you do it?
I did it under Universal Life Church, where you pay $15, and they're from Modesto, California. But according to the United States Supreme Court, it is a legal denomination.
It is illegal.
It is a legal denomination.
Yeah, that's why.
They were sued or something in the late 1950s and went to the Supreme Court and they won, because the Supreme Court says we cannot define churches, religion, And so it is a legal denomination.
Did you have to provide
I did, I had to provide
certification
my
of your ordination?
I had to provide my ordination certificate for them, yeah.
Now,
And when I did Vermont, what I'm doing is Vermont, I haven't done it yet, but I went through the Justice of the Peace through the town, or the state of Vermont, paid $100, did it the legal way. But I could have done the Universal Church, I think people were talking about earlier, for like $25 or something.
Be careful with Connecticut, because it's being reviewed by the Supreme Court, the Universal Life Church, because of divorces. So
Well,
there's been some
I did
yeah,
the traditional.
They're being, there are some high-profile divorces that are calling the Universal Life Church into question as a legal entity. It's being questioned in Connecticut, and it's going to be questioned in New York.
And Rhode Island.
Huh?
Yeah.
And Rhode
What I-
Island.
And Rhode Island.
Yeah, what I did is I called Maine, I
Yeah.
called Augusta, Maine, to find out if it was legal
Yeah.
in Maine. And
I
they said
did,
it was.
I used it once, in New Jersey, and it was okay. That was quite a few years ago. But there's some rumblings now that are going on about, and it's not because of the marriage issue, but because of the property distribution in a divorce. Alimony.
I
Excuse
had a
me.
couple of,
okay, yes,
I just had a couple of experiences like that too, or connected with a variety of things in other states. One is, now I've heard another angle on the rumbling is, if you become a member of the Life Church, you have to renew that each year.
Yeah.
I've heard that, I don't know, I haven't, heard it, I just heard that. The ordination is effective, but, some things that I think.
You have to register with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts every year if you are
Oh, that's
using.
it, that's where it's.
That's Massachusetts, you have to apply for
I
the
see,
ordination,
okay,
yes.
so us as members of Massachusetts would have to renew it, okay. The other thing is in a couple of places, I did one in Florida. And if I remember the way it worked, I negotiated down there, I couldn't, let's see, I had to have somebody from Florida in the ceremony. In other words, I did the ceremony, and then I think that one, they actually signed the paper, the license, but I was able to kind of con-celebrate with them, you know? But I had to have them there. Another place, I think it was Vermont, no, I forget where it was, but that one, I just had to have him present. But I could do the whole ceremony. See, I guess the thing is, I always check with the online or actually make phone calls and check out what the situation is. Because there really are different, some places, there's reciprocity, you can just go get the certificate and do it like Vermont, like New Hampshire, or other places you have to go through this kind of manipulation of the situation and have either a valid minister or a valid somebody there and all those kind of things.
It's down to the town level, actually, with ULC, it's down to the town clerk level.
Oh, okay.
And some of them understand it, and if you go to a town where they don't want it, even if the state says it's okay, they don't have to accept you.
Right.
It's getting
Now-
crazy.
It is that way.
Yeah.
now, following up on what you said, I went into the Secretary of State's office in early April, and I thought it was in November, but it was April that we went in. And we went to the Governor's Council meeting as well the same day. And I had two questions when I went in on that very question you raised. And I wasn't aware that people that are holding the internet ministry, I wasn't aware that they had to file annually with the Secretary of State's office in order for the ministry to be valid. And they confirmed, yes, you have to file annually. Okay? So those folks within the association that have the internet ministry, they have to be made aware that it's an annual filing or it's not valid.
No.
No. And the Barica town clerk told me about the internet ministry of the
dude.
of the dude,
The dude,
of the dude, you know,
Ah, come
in
on.
order to do a wedding, of the dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. And also, the Executive Council Administrative Office confirmed to me that you don't have to be an American citizen or a resident of the Commonwealth to be a Justice of the Peace within the Commonwealth.
No?
No. That floored me,
How do you get well, you still have to have enough people sign your,
yeah. And there's a Justice of the Peace within the association who's not a resident of Massachusetts. And that
how
floored
does
me.
that,
That doesn't make sense.
that
I know
doesn't,
it,
No, you have to live in the town, that's how.
Nothing against that person.
I know it.
Must have a house.
He came from one of the islands. He wanted to be a Justice of the Peace.
huh,
Yeah, so he
That's
became
new.
one, but he's not a resident of Massachusetts. Yeah, yes,
You know, talking about, I thought I could only perform the ceremony in Massachusetts. So you're talking about going elsewhere. Is it like one of those becoming a justice for the day? Do you have to?
Yeah.
it's the same day for
It's
New
the same-
Hampshire. It's a
yeah.
reciprocal agreement. You go to the Secretary, you get an application to perform a specific ceremony for a couple for the day. They send a copy of your commission from Massachusetts, $25. They send you back the form that you have to staple to the marriage license when you send it back to New Hampshire. Vermont, it's $100, but it's specific to the couple. It's not like you can just go up there for nothing. You have to have a couple to do it with.
okay, yes.
In last October, I did a wedding for my nephew in Rhode Island. In about March of last year, I said, I gotta check that out and see what I need to do, and thank God I did it because it was an act of legislation. So I had to apply, send all my paperwork, whatever, and it had to go through each phase of, of legislation, had to be stamped and whatever. And then finally, when it was passed, it was like, it had the specific name, where they were getting married and stuff, and then that paperwork, I had to return it with this completed marriage certificate. It didn't cost me any money, which I was shocked, because I said, you're kidding, I don't have to just pay you $25 and fill out something. And they said, no, this is something that, that's the way that they do it, but they are in the process of changing it, Rhode Island, to become more of a one-day solemnizer with the fee and stuff like that, so. Every state is different.
Yep. But as a suggestion, have you done the wedding?
Yes, I did it.
Did you get a copy of the legislation?
I have it, yeah, I have it
Good.
in my pocket, if you want to see it.
No, but keep it,
Yeah,
because,
yeah, I have it together. Yeah, I have just a copy of it, just to show anybody, but I have everything together.
yeah, it's good to keep it as a keepsake. Any other question? Yes, Mike?
Would it be legal to pronounce them in Massachusetts and then go somewhere else to do kind of a mock wedding?
Yes,
Just pronounce
they have to
them?
get a license in Massachusetts.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep,
And then-
certainly, I've
and
done
then do
that.
That would be easier than
Yep,
yeah.
going
sure.
going
If we wanna go through
legislation.
that process. It's much easier now because they don't have to do blood work.
Right.
Just get a license in Massachusetts.
3 days.
Yep. Yes,
You mentioned earlier that New Hampshire justices only get a donation?
yes,
That's what the law states that.
yes.
So what if they charge? Is it something that they're doing on their own that they're not supposed to be doing that, right?
No, in New Hampshire, the fee to get married by a Justice of the Peace is a donation to the Justice of the Peace.
So they are, if somebody's charging, it's against
There's no
regulation.
charge.
It's okay if the justice tells the couple, well, this is what I charge, that would be their donation to the justice.
A New Hampshire Justice of the Peace, their fee is a donation. But we coming outside of the state are not governed by that.
Okay.
Okay? Now, talking about New Hampshire, who here has done a wedding in New Hampshire? How long ago, Bill, how long ago?
Almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago, Bill?
Last one I did was probably 2 years ago.
Who, all right, next person.
2 years ago.
Next person. I'm talking about time-wise. Who else raised their hand?
About 3
No,
years
not
ago.
you. Again,
No secrets about it.
tell me, who else raised their hand?
Oh, I did, I said about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Who else raised their hand? All right, the process has changed a little bit. When you send in your application, before, it was sufficient just to send in a photocopy of your appointment card.
Oh, I had to send in the whole certificate.
I said the
Okay,
certificate.
well, okay, that's, what I'm getting at is this. Before, they accepted just a photocopy of your card. Now they want a photocopy of your certificate,
Right, the whole commission.
the whole
Yeah.
commission.
Yeah.
Okay, they would send back your request paper until you sent in that. Okay? And the application form itself has changed also. So you have to download from their webpage the new application. So it's changed a little bit, okay? So if you,
It's still $25.
so if you have a copy of the old form, you have to download the new form. But they're very great, they're very good
They're fast.
about turning the paperwork around and sending it back. It's still $25.
Yeah.
You can, in a time crunch, call them up and say, I'm driving up, and they'll have it waiting for you as soon as you get there. They're very good,
They're very efficient.
okay?
So New Hampshire, the only state in New England that you, for Massachusetts that has reciprocity.
Vermont does too.
Vermont?
Yeah, you
But
can
it
do
costs more to
$100.
go to Vermont.
Or Vermont? It's same procedure for
you-
Vermont or for Rhode Island?
I haven't, not Rhode Island, I haven't ever gone to Vermont. I just know it's $100, but it's reciprocal.
Oh, okay. So
Can I
Yes.
just clarify something? As a appointed Massachusetts Justice of the Peace, we're appointed to do marriages in Massachusetts. You can then do marriages in any state as long as you go through that state's Secretary of State to get the permission. Correct?
No.
As a Massachusetts
No.
Justice of the Peace, it states we can only perform marriages in Massachusetts.
you
No.
will
No.
ask them, they say no, you cannot.
That's what I
No,
thought.
in Maine, you cannot do weddings. Only notary publics in Maine can do weddings. You cannot do a wedding in Maine.
Right, I'm saying
As a
we're only
non-resident.
commissioned to do weddings in Massachusetts.
In
That's correct.
Massachusetts.
If we wanna go out of state, you have to go through that secretary, that government, that, you need to get permission.
Or be ordained from Our
Or-
Lady of the
or do an
Internet.
You have to get a letter of
or-
certificate.
But then you're not really Justice of the Peace then,
That's correct.
correct. So as Massachusetts Justice of the Peace, we are to do weddings in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts,
Yes. But
right.
I don't think that was clear when we were talking, because then we were reciprocal, Maine, and
There-
it got confusing.
Because we're neighboring states with New Hampshire and Vermont, we have same-day privileges as justices of the peace. So it says in New Hampshire that a person outside of the state who's commissioned as a justice of the peace in their state can have a same-day, may marry
Designation.
as a
But you, in
visiting.
advance, you must do that in advance.
In advance, you
And
can't go up there
and
and do it.
sometimes there's a fee for that.
Right. A lot of states don't have justices. Judges can marry people, magistrates can marry people, sheriffs can marry people, but there are a lot of states outside of New England that don't have us at all. Okay, so that,
But in those states, you might be able to do a one-day designation as a layman with the applicant.
maybe, but,
When I was trying to marry someone in Hawaii,
Yeah.
they don't have justices, so I had
Right.
to send them the paperwork from the Universal Life.
Right.
To be able to perform in Hawaii.
You could have
It's
done
best,
it.
it's best to contact the Secretary of State in that respect of,
From wedding in Florida.
Yeah.
and
In
see what the
advance.
rules and regulations are.
Okay,
Okay.
just clarify.
All right,
In Florida.
now,
Not Republican.
active in the MJPA, that can't be stressed too much, because it's very important that we are a professional organization. We always have to be professional in every dealings that we have. Role of the Governor's Council and the Secretary of State play in our existence is justice of the peace. Well, certainly, we get our power from the Governor and the Governor's Council. I don't know how often any of you go into Boston, but the Governor's Council that was here today stressed that we should contact the members of the council for anything that we need as far as the governor's council. Anytime that I've gone into Boston and I've been able to go to the meetings, you're greeted quite well when you go there. And if they know you're a justice of the peace and you're visiting them, they introduce you to the whole body. If it's the lieutenant governor or the secretary of state that's in command at the meeting, you're introduced. They really welcome you.
And what is the meeting?
It's every Wednesday. They hold public hearings between 11 and 12 o'clock if they're interviewing prospective judges or anyone that they have to vote on. They hold a public hearing, and certainly you can't ask questions. You're just sitting there as an observer. But they all ask questions of the person that's being interviewed, and they vote on that person. The way the process works is the Wednesday before, they're given a packet of information on the person they're going to vote on the following week, which includes our appointments. So the following Wednesday, they interview that person. And they ask questions of that person. And then they vote on that person at 12 o'clock. And they just don't vote on the individuals. They vote on monetary issues as well at 12 o'clock. It's a very important meeting. Sometimes they don't vote on issues. 12 o'clock, all present, no issues to vote, the meeting's over. Other times, they have very important matters that they vote on.
So
Yeah.
do we need to sign in for a meeting or just walk in?
Excuse me?
Do we need to register for a meeting, for council meeting, online?
No, you don't have to register.
No, you just walk in, you sit down.
Okay.
It's held adjacent to the governor's chamber. You walk in, there's a state trooper at the door. There's a receptionist opposite the state trooper. You state you want to go to the governor's council meetings. They cannot prevent you from going to the meeting. You walk in, it's a horseshoe type of a table with chairs on all three sides. At the head of the table is the person who's chairing the meeting. And the eight governor's councils are sitting around the table. They have name plates around there. And you sit at one of the chairs, and generally, they don't have visitors that come to these meetings, and it's very strange that they don't have visitors, because it's an important meeting. So they all look around and say, who's this person, you know? And someone will ask, well, who are you? And you explain, oh, I'm a justice of the peace, I'm here to see what you're doing. But the average citizen of the Commonwealth can go to those meetings at any time.
It's public.
Yeah, it's public, and you identify yourself, and usually you're sitting behind a governor's counselor, and they'll turn around and say, who are you? And you identify yourself, and they will stand up and introduce you. It's really very nice. And then after the meeting, the governor or the lieutenant governor or the secretary of state will come over and, hey, how are you? So it's very nice, you know? And, you know, as a justice of the peace, you say, I'm a justice of the peace. I'm here to see how you conduct my business. You know, Arthur, you've been there a few times.
Yeah.
Michael, you've been there.
No.
But you never been there?
It is, they do make you feel very like a VIP when you're
Yeah.
on there.
Went to the Judiciary Committee, but not the,
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's very nice to go to these meetings, and you're certainly welcome to. Yeah. All right? Well, the role they play is they vote on our appointments, and the Secretary of State's office is the one that notifies us. And you go up on the 17th floor, and you take your oath. It's not important that you go there to do that. You can request that the paperwork be sent to your local district court and take your oath there.
I did that. And they sent me out a certificate. You got a new kid on the block, and he stamped the thing, and they went through the certificate. So I called them up, and I told them, I said, we'll get a new one out to you right away. So they sent me out a new one with two big names going through the certificate. So I'm done calling them.
Yeah. Yes, Murray?
We have 3 or 4, 5 commissioners that can swear people in the association.
Yep.
We
So
can
you don't have
administer
to
the
go to
oath.
Boston?
Yeah,
Or
you can just come to a
You can
meeting.
go to somebody that,
Can the town clerk swear
Yes.
them in?
I went to Boston.
Excuse me.
I went to my town clerk.
The town clerk can if the town clerk is a commissioner. You have to have 2 commissioners present to be
Right.
sworn in as a justice of the peace and a notary. So just the town clerk by herself cannot do that
Right.
unless she is one of the commissioners and someone else is a commissioner.
Now, let me ask a question of the body. Everybody that is a justice of the peace gets a card like this. But of the body, how many have that card on them?
What's that, the question?
How many have the card?
Everybody, yeah, who has a card on them?
Oh, yes.
In the 36 years of being a justice of the peace, I have never been asked by anybody at any wedding, where's your identification as a justice of the peace? I've never been asked that question. Have anybody here been asked that question?
No.
Nope.
Imagine that. They
Nobody.
just take your word for it that you're a justice of the peace.
Over here.
It's really
That
amazing.
is good not to have any
You've been asked?
identification.
Yeah.
Oh, they were smart.
Has anybody here been asked?
No,
No. It's amazing how people take your word for it, you know?
very trusting.
Doesn't it depend on how they find us? If they find us on the MJPA website, is it a reasonable conclusion that we're still commissioned?
Yeah. Now, as a justice of the peace, when couples come to me with a marriage license, I very rarely ask them for identification. Because the license is valid proof to me that they've shown the clerks their identification, and I just take it for granted.
We're a very trusting group
I
of
ask
people.
for, I ask for people's licenses when they present their identification, like driver's license, so that I see a photo. Only because I don't wanna get caught doing like a proxy
Yeah?
thing.
Yes, the question, is that legal?
I get a lot of, last minute requests.
There were a couple of times where the bride or groom looked kind of suspicious to me early in life as a justice of the peace. I did ask for identification then, but not recently. No. Not even then. Okay. What? Well, the last item is professionalism. Means professionalism.
It's trusting you.
Just in closing, I know we're paying our president a lot of money. And she put this PowerPoint presentation together, and it cost a lot of money for that.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't we just flip through those pages, and I'll explain what those pages are. And then I'll be through with my presentation.
There are the
This
counselors,
is all the governor's council with their phone numbers,
summary of duties.
summary of all the duties.
Oh, and by the way, this would be on the website, so you'll be able to read it full screen at home.
And you can download it to your thumb drive if you
Yes.
like.
And all this is in the handout on the table.
Yep. History here is Rosario Salerno.
The high-priced Boston City clerk.
Yes. Relationship between a JP and a couple. There's a do's and don'ts. Miscellaneous, officiant website, Massachusetts marriage requirements. Just forgot the license, forget it, go home and get it. It's not very nice, but there it is.
And
Okay,
that's Mark McLaughlin's, thing. And that's everything that's in that book that you're gonna read in a cold winter night when you have nothing else to do. Thank you very much. Yes,
Bill, one more thing. Years and years ago, when you first started doing this, when I first started, you said something that really struck me and I've lived by it. You are a professional, like Bill says, so if someone calls you on your answering machine, listen to what your answering machine sounds like. Yeah, leave a message, or yeah, you know what to do. That turned me off right off the bat.
You never called me back.
Hello, the Office of the Justice of the Peace. I'm sorry we're not available to answer your call at this time. Please leave your name, your number, and a brief message, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Not, yeah, you know what to do, and click. world of difference, believe me, because I hang up on people that I call that have that kind of message.
Yes, yeah, it's very important. Professionalism.
It is.
And if I might add one more thing, where you vaguely touched on the association being active in the meetings. I know my wife and I, we get quite a few wedding calls, and we turn down just as many, if not twice as many, as we get. And I like to refer them to people that I know that I've seen do weddings. So when Donna's looking for someone to do a mock wedding ceremony, volunteer to get up and do a mock ceremony so that we can see what you do. I know a lot of justices and really nice people, but I wouldn't hire them to do my daughter's wedding, you know, but they were friends, but I would. So if you get up there and you show us what you can do, how you present yourself, what kind of ceremony you have, we'll be more than glad to recommend you.
I love that, to do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.